Okay, with that, I'd like to call this December the 5th, 2023 council meeting to order. It is 7 p.m. I will have a reading from Councillor Eagle.
All right. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge our meeting place. The city of Flin Flon Council Chambers is situated on the ancestral lands of the Treaty 5 territory. We would like to acknowledge that we also work in partnership with First Nations in Treaty 6 and 10 territories and the Métis Nation.
Thank you. We'll now have a reading and confirming of the minutes. Councillor Richardson.
Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held November 21st, 2023 be adopted as received.
Seconder, Councillor Slip. All in favor? Carried. That'll move us into the resolutions. First up, we have Councillor Dallas Funk.
Check schedule 49-02, be it resolved that the accounts in the amount of $473,688.61 be approved for payment.
Seconder, Councillor Hanson. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Hanson.
The HUD Day water pumping agreement, 49-03. Be it resolved that the city of Flin Flon enter into an agreement with HUD Bay Minerals, Inc. regarding the pump water from Trout Lake to Cliff Lake, and that the chief administrative officer be authorized to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Seconder, Councillor Eagle. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Slip.
Resolution 49-04, be it resolved that council grant Mayor Fontaine leave of absence for the December 19th, 2023 council meeting.
Seconder, Councillor Hanson. All in favor? Carried.
Just one thing, we got to spend a week with Mayor Fontaine last week in Brandon at the AMM. He's doing great. Everything seems to be progressing nicely. So he's very engaged with what we're doing day to day. So yeah, it was great to see him.
It was, yeah.
Good. Councillor Slip.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I was excited about Mayor Fontaine.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Resolution 49-05, be it resolved that the animal control report for the month of November 2023 be received and filed.
Seconder, Councillor Dallas Funk. All in favor? Carried. A motion to adjourn. Okay, Councillor Hanson. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go to questions from the press and then the public, if there's any.
Yeah, we
Yes.
do have a question here today, not about what's happened pertaining to this meeting, but today at the station, across the provincial newswire came a story of how in debt the Progressive Conservatives have put Manitoba in. And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot here, but how does that look going towards that new swimming pool? Because Bob Canoe went on record by saying it's 6 times the deficit as what they thought it was before they went into the election, which is a significant amount of money.
Well, we all heard it. That was the feel last week when we were in Brandon, because we
Okay.
went to AMM, so it's the Association of Manitoba Municipalities. All ministers were there, as was the premier. And they didn't give the number, but the tone of every conversation, and during the bear pit when there was like a 3-hour, everybody could get up and ask questions of them. Issues with legacy issues was a phrase that was used quite a bit. No promises to previous things, or going to agree with them. We lobbied hard for the pool.
Okay.
We were quickly told that nothing was going to be decided from previous administration, and that they had to do their own budget first, and then today that was read. It wasn't all negative, and we were quickly told to keep granting, and that we would be made. We didn't meet with Minister Bushi, who is actually the person that we need to speak to for that promised $10 million. So in 2 weeks, we're hoping that we're gonna see him when we're down there as well, because we're gonna see the health minister. So hoping to lobby and ask for that. That being said, we are still in the process of granting, and we can continue to grant for the 5 million and 5 million. So it's not off the table, and we're hopeful for that. But yes, it definitely wasn't, yeah, we're gonna give you the $10 million. It was brakes are on everything and we need to redirect and see, especially because a lot of their mandates are more focused on infrastructure with highways, snow clearing, housing, justice and RCMP officers and healthcare, so.
So do you kind of have a time frame when they're gonna let you know one way or another?
They have to, it wasn't their budget they did today, but
No.
they have to
Yeah.
put their budget together, which I think is in January, Rob, I'm not
Yeah,
sure of that
yes.
exactly.
So
but-
early 2024 then?
Yeah, and don't worry, we're gonna be hammering them.
Yeah, like I said, we went there and part of the, I'll just, we met with specific ministers. So you get to request which ones you wanna meet with. We requested 4, we got 2, and even though they weren't the ministers, we still gave them the full package. We still lobbied hard, we still said how much we needed this for retention and wellness within our community. And so everybody knew at that conference that we were lobbying for a pool, and that's why we were there. And like I said, in 2 weeks when I'm in Winnipeg with Mayor Fontaine, same thing, we will lobby again with the ministers.
One thing that we haven't really talked about, but during what they call the bear pit, when all the ministers are there and you can ask questions, nobody asked I don't know if that's an official title, the recreation minister, any questions. So Premier Canoe said, we'd like you to say something, and he talked about how the province still has to provide recreation for sustainability of communities. So although we didn't talk to him face to face or personally, that was one of the positive things I thought.
Absolutely.
But we still have a lot of work to do.
But we did talk to Minister Naylor, who is Transportation, Government Services and Infrastructure. And our conversation was really around Highway 291. So this is the 3rd conversation this council has had with minister or the government in regards to that highway. We needed to be ready. And it hasn't actually been looked at or had any work done on it for over 20 years, which the new administration was quite shocked at. And so Minister Naylor said, okay, we'll look at that and we are gonna follow through with that and hope they do because we asked the previous administration as well.
We talked to Minister Moses about
Yeah.
who is land and talked to him about making it a little easier to acquire some crown land so we can be ready for hopefully some industry in Flin Flon. So
Absolutely.
it was good. We need to talk to more ministers and they seem very willing to meet with us and talk. So.
Yeah, and I feel like Naylor's administration was really open to having that conversation about 291, especially when we were talking about it being truckload bearing and that, there would be industry going through there, not only for industry, but for our community. It's not the best road, as everybody knows. And a lot of the administration is quite shocked that the government's actually responsible for that, not the municipality. The other thing that Councillor Sitt might want to talk about is in the breakout sessions, he went to the CSO program session, so there was quite a bit of talk about that. I didn't attend that one.
Yeah, last council meeting, we were asked about the CSO thing. A lot of communities are using CSOs. Unfortunately, they can afford them or they're getting money from private companies to hire CSOs, community safety officers. And somebody from Lynn Lake suggested that because we can't fill our RCMP quotas, that can the salaries that aren't getting paid to these RCMP officers be transported to CSOs. It didn't really get a great response, which is understandable because RCMP is federal, but we're gonna again lobby for funding for CSOs because it would be a great thing for any municipality to have these people to take the weight off of the RCMP. And we can do so much more like bylaw enforcement, institutional safety officers for the hospital, which would relieve RCMP and traffic and also, minor offenses and also just being a presence in the community. So it's something we need to look at. It's not inexpensive, unfortunately. But, I mean, they talked about maybe you don't need the newest of vests and equipment and cars for these people. So it was interesting to listen to places where the CSO program is working great in Thompson. Thompson has a great community safety plan that I want to follow up with them on. So that discussion was very, very informative.
Did you want to talk about the RCMP meeting?
So the RCMP meeting went great. We are next for the detachment and it is out to tender. What else? They're not filling soft vacancies right now, which might be maternity or paternity leaves. They're just really focused on the hard vacancies that are, this RCMP got moved to a different place or they retired out. They're filling those.
The other thing that we really discussed with the RCMP was housing, because communities like Cranberry and Creighton, they subsidize it or pay for it.
Yeah.
So in our area, they don't. So we found out the process to apply for that and what that looks like, because that has a lot to do with retention. If somebody has to buy their house in a community, they kind of tend to go no, especially if they have to move in 3 years. They're not really making any money, they're probably losing money, even though that their move is paid for. So we're looking into that as well.
This is important. I think one of the things that the RCMP mentioned was, that we should be recruiting in our own community for young people, because they have a new program where if, somebody at the school or somewhere that wants to become an RCMP officer, they have a choice of staying in their own community. So that might be a great thing for somebody who wants to become an RCMP officer. So I think we probably want to start doing a little more helping the RCMP recruit, because it is a real problem getting RCMP officers across Canada. They gave me the stats, but I can't remember them, but they were crazy. Like how many positions and how many cadets they have. So all meetings were good.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great, and like I mentioned, I think we're pretty fortunate. December 19th, we get a one-on-one meeting with the health minister, who's also the deputy premier. So we're going to discuss some things, especially about working with Sask Health and having equal services here so people don't have to travel if they're from Tenerife Beach or Creighton. Also, they've announced an MRI mobile unit that's going to be maintained in Thompson. We want to ensure that there's dates that are set, that it's going to actually come to Flin Flon, because it really doesn't help us if you have to travel to Thompson. You're in the same boat then. You're traveling 8 hours, and what if you don't have a vehicle? What if you don't have money? So just ensuring that we get fair days here, and as well as the PAW gets their fair days.
And also something I got to meet the mayor of Lloydminster, and Saskatchewan and Alberta have an agreement of combined funding for the hospital in Lloydminster.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like Saskatchewan's willing to play ball.
Yes.
So we, Councillor Dallas Funk will bring that up, and I have the agreement, and she has a copy of it to them to say, look, Alberta, Saskatchewan can do this, why can't we? If we're in the same boat.
Mike, wouldn't it be Alberta that has to play ball? The hospital's on the Saskatchewan side, Lloyd.
Doesn't matter.
But the problem is we can't get the two provinces to meet wherever the hospital is. If it was a Creighton, we could, you know what I mean? So we need, Saskatchewan is willing to talk to Alberta, you're right. And Alberta's willing to talk to Saskatchewan. We need Manitoba and Saskatchewan to talk to.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. At the same time, when we were down there, we requested to speak to other ministers as well. So we got an appointment with the Minister of Justice. One of the things that we don't have in this community is a probation officer, which is really important. So I think the closest one is Swan River. We actually have an office here, so there's no reason why it's not filled, and it hasn't been posted. So that's one of the things we're going to talk there. I think we've requested to speak to Minister Bushi, yeah, who is the Northern Municipal Relations, who is the guy we need to talk to about the pool. Yeah, that's all.
You got a list of things that you wanna talk about with that health minister meeting, or?
Yeah.
What do you got?
The ER, surgeries.
Working,
Maternity.
combining the care services for Sask and Manitoba, transportation, and the Northern Transportation Program. So even though you get your gas paid for, you don't get your hotel paid for, you don't get meals paid for. So if you're on a fixed income or a single parent, the reality is you're probably gonna miss a lot of your appointments. So having that discussion that it's not fair for people in the north, discussing the fact that doctors get to pick and choose if they wanna do telehealth, which as well puts people not getting appointments with specialists, the MRI mobile unit, and also talking about the services that we have lost in the north.
Yeah.
And really the front line workers and how we can get some of those services back, and retention, and having residents perhaps. So yeah,
They have to
do you
be,
want me to keep going?
Day surgery,
Yeah, no,
obstetrics, clinical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the list is long and,
I have a list if you'd like.
and, you know, we have the facility. We just
We do.
need the services and the people to run it. And we need the government of both, back to Manitoba, Saskatchewan. They only count the people who live in Manitoba when they do their census for the hospital. There's, you know, that's what, 5,000 people or 6,000, whatever it may be.
They use a sentence, yeah.
But
It's just
usually,
for fun.
but really, in reality, it's 20,000 people that
Yes.
that hospital could service or
Yeah.
should service. And women should be able to have babies in this town, and there should be some sort of surgical. So, you know, those are the things we need to talk to them about. They have to understand the uniqueness of the regionality of where we live.
We need to be looked at like Thompson as the hub, because we are the hub for Pelican, Sandy Bay, Deschambault, Crichton, Denair Beach, Flin Flon, Sheridan, Cranberry. And we're not looked at that, thank you. We're not looked at that, where Thompson really is starting to advocate for themselves, because they are looked at 13,000 for their ER, where it's actually 55,000. So ours at 49.9 is actually 20 to 22,000. So that's part of it. So it's almost just reinstate the services that we had by actually looking at the numbers that are real for our community.
I just got one other question here. Last meeting we were at, you guys were talking about that accessible community living complex as we go by Willowvale there.
Yeah.
You said you're gonna have an update for us at this meeting.
Yeah, well, we were gonna have a public hearing today, but we were informed that wasn't enough time. So January 2nd will be the public hearing for that rezoning of that area. Because we do have, first things first, we have to rezone the area. And then again, if there's a developer willing to purchase it and develop it, then that would be on that said developer.
Which area is that?
That is,
Eagle Kerner.
yeah,
Willowvale.
Willowvale, like the splash, the
Those
waiting
two
pool.
states.
North.
Yeah.
So is it still open to questions from?
We're gonna finish the press and then public.
So is that, what's it gonna be called? What is it, accessible community living? Is that what it's gonna be?
It's-
Accessible housing.
Whatever the developer decides it is essentially. Right now, we're just looking at rezoning.
Seniors housing.
Yeah, it's rezoning right now though, technically is all we're doing.
It would be called accessible housing, because seniors housing is assisted living.
Yeah.
Sorry, assisted living, thanks, yeah. Because seniors housing is for anybody, you just have to be a certain age and up, where this is a very specific demographic with help and food services and all the things that would require somebody that can't live by themselves, but yet aren't at that level, say, to go to the manor or the PCH. So it's that you're not on your own, you're quite not ready to go into the hospital.
But you said you got somebody interested in going over there, right?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
You said you have somebody interested in going
Oh,
over
yes.
Yeah, there's people looking, yeah.
there. Okay, that's it for me.
Has there been any movement on that since the last meeting? Any sort of conversations or anything taking place?
No,
I know you're not at
because we can't do anything because we're waiting for a public hearing. Like, we can't rezone that. We're waiting.
Okay. Alright, this, the water pumping agreement, I see that the text is all down here. But in the words of some of the people on council or for Lynn, or anybody who wants to chip in on this, what will this agreement mean for the city, and does it represent any sort of change in city policy?
It's basically HB has shut their pumps off from Trout Lake to Cliff Lake. So we reached an agreement with them because we were a little worried about the drop in the water in Cliff Lake. So we just, they only have to run it for like a week, and then the lake should be topped up enough for the winter. You know, but we needed to have the ability to turn it on and off.
Is the water source of Cliff Lake is Trout Lake, or is it the other way around?
No, Trout Lake is the water source for Cliff Lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know Hud Bay has had meetings in the past and is kind of sort of batting around the idea of doing some work or possibly decommissioning the dam at the south end of Trout Lake where it goes into Big Island.
It won't affect it.
Won't affect it at all? Okay.
Because I've driven my quad in front of that dam when Trout Lake Mine was going. So that lake has dropped over the years and gone back up and dropped. And I think they're removing one plank at a time on the dam.
Yeah, it's something.
It's a beautiful area. If you've never been there, it's actually worth the walk.
So what is this gonna mean for the city? Like, is there any sort of additional work for work crews or
No.
like what is this gonna end up looking like for you guys?
We just phone them and tell them to turn on the pump.
Oh, so it's Hud Bay doing it then?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the terms of the agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. Also see that the next meeting has been granted leave for Mayor Fontaine. I know his situation is a bit delicate at the moment, but do we have an idea of when he might be able to come back?
No, but I will tell you that Mayor Fontaine had a very poignant moment at the AMM at the city's caucus when he told the city's mayors and councillors, cities being the Flin Flon Distilleries, that the situation that his wife is ill and that he thanked the town of Steinbach where this happened, and then he thanked the city of Winnipeg, but he said, it's all great, but I can't bring her home because there's no service here. And it really touched people. And then he was asked to talk on
The rating, CJ.
whatever the radio station in Winnipeg is, CJOB, about it. So although it's not a political issue,
It is.
it's close to home.
Yeah.
You know, it really, he hit it right on the head.
It would hardly be the first time.
I wouldn't
that
like that one.
Yeah, it's hardly been the first time that somebody in Flin Flon or area has been forced to relocate for
That's right.
healthcare. It probably won't be the last, and hopefully somebody will actually listen to us about it for a change.
That's right.
Exactly.
But also wanted to ask, further to what you said about AMM and further to what you said about the pool funding, because that was brought up and obviously it sounds like there's going to be a process for that. I also wanted to know too, has there been any sort of overture from the city towards any sort of federal granting authority? Because I know that one of the things that can be used for a project like this are ISIP grants, which I believe are provincial and federal, or just federal?
The original grant that we received for the pool, which, like the original 8 million that we used to talk about.
Yeah.
That was split 3 ways, and that was an ISIP grant.
Okay.
And so, we're continuing to grant. Most of what we've granted for recently has been provincial funding, and that was the $5 million grant that we asked for a year ago, which turned into a promise of 10, which we're now trying to find out what it's actually going to be.
Yeah.
And, but we can still continue to grant. I mean, we're looking at an opening date of the pool, if everything goes fine, late 2025, if not early 2026. So we still have some time to do some granting. And when I did the original public meeting about a year or so ago, when we went through that $17.5 million projection that I had, we worked through all of that with different various areas of places to get funding without a $10 million, because at that point we didn't have that. We had no idea that that was going to be an opportunity for us. And we were still able to see how we could get to that $7.5 million to make that pool happen.
And that's the number you mentioned there, the 17 point, that's with the 20% contingency,
That's with 20% contingency,
that's the upper limit basically of what can be afforded. And the current price, from what I understand, is not actually that high, that's just what you budgeted up to.
That was the worst case scenario that we looked at. And one of the things that I'm pleased to say actually is that we've gone through phase 1 of the pool, and so at this point, the investment has been 1.7 million, which our investment, if I remember correctly, is somewhere around 350,000. The rest is federal and provincial money. And so, now that we're done that phase, we've been able to get a stronger projection of the cost. And so if we stay completely online with what they've projected now, we would actually come in under the 17.5 million. So there's still some contingency there, so still have to worry that we might end up at 17.5, but it's looking good.
So then what is in place now for the grant money and the fundraising?
Well, when I did the public information session last year, we looked at the 17.5 million, and we had, I think it was 8.8 between federal, provincial, and municipal for that original ISIP grant. So there was 2.3, I think, that we had to put in. And so then there was another 2 million for fundraising, and
That was your wish, that wasn't there yet.
no, it's,
2 million.
no, but that's the
So I'm
projection
asking,
that we're
my
getting.
question was what's in place for funding from all sources right now? The
In
grants
place
that
of
are-
funding for all sources right now is the original 8.8 that we talked about, another 1.4 from us, with the 400,000 we've been putting aside since 2020. And there's somewhere around 500,000 from fundraising. Are you adding this up in your head, Gary?
Well, so there's 6 or 7, if you went to 17.5, there's 6 or 7 missing still.
Which is exactly right, because when I did that public presentation, I indicated that worst case scenario would be us doing debentures with about $6.5 million.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to the press if we have any more questions, just to not get too sidetracked.
I did have one more, but it can wait if you.
No, I'd rather finish up with the press. Nope, I'd rather finish up with the press, so.
Okay.
Ask you.
I also wanted to ask regarding the, what was mentioned at the, what was it, the public meeting last week, the campground master plan. Wanted to know if there had been any further discussion about that between city staff and council about what, comes next for you guys on that.
Some of us were away.
Fair enough, yeah. Well, I figured if, I mean, y'all probably know from the inside a lot more than I do from the
Yes.
out. But I mean, I was at the presentation and there were still like a lot of questions about that, like time estimates, cost estimates, and what the project would actually end up looking like. It's open and draft, it's a lot of throwing stuff at the wall, things like that. Wondering if something will stick. But I wanted to know if there's been any sort of discussion from the city, from staff or council about what might stick and what might advance further with the plan and what might not.
Well, I think all we can really comment on right now would be we're looking at predominantly the Flinties campground area because that's within the city, because that whole plan is like includes the entire area, like outside of the city of Flin Flon. So that is from the social and rec committee's standing, that's sort of our main area that we're looking at, and then we're trying to hammer down set costs and, you know,
Figure out
then,
where the trails go.
yeah, and then from there we'll prioritize what we want to contribute, because there's a lot in that plan and there's also a lot of money potentially in that plan, not just in that campground area, but for the
Right now,
entire.
the plan's a wish list, am I
Yeah.
right?
No, that's
No.
right.
Well,
say
that's
that?
not quite, that's not quite right.
Yeah.
Heather, did you want to talk about?
But we are granting on a couple
Sure.
different things, so one of the main things would be the watershed area. At the beginning, when you're coming in towards Walmart there, that water swampy area. And we're looking at doing a boardwalk through there is one of the first ones that we'll be granting for. And we are also granting for the food forest and the healing forest. So there's $10,000 grants out for trees right now. So the healing forest is being granted through the city, and then the community garden is granting for the food forest, and those are each $10,000. Creighton is also granting for $10,000, and Denair Beach just found out about it yesterday, so they'll also be hopefully granting for that $10,000 as well.
Okay. I'm just thinking, because if different things end up getting axed from the plan, which is, I think there's 23 different points in it, and some of them seem to be a little bit more feasible than others. So things are probably going to change. So with that food forest, I hate that phrase, I'm just going to call it a garden because it's basically what it is.
No, that's not what it is.
Mhm.
It's a food forest.
It's trees.
It's
It's
trees,
trees.
it's actual trees.
It's a forest.
Hey, you should go for a walk with Lynn in the bush one day.
Yeah.
You will learn a
You might
lot.
not come back, Eric.
Sure.
Yay.
He's
Yeah.
eating my food.
He's never eaten, you have no idea what we're talking about then.
I have not had enough sleep in the last 24 hours to laugh at this, so.
Here, here.
But regardless, if things get taken in or out of the plan, the things that remain in it might change. So is there an idea of, like you said, there's already been granting for part of this, is that granting, could that potentially change?
Phases, so it becomes quite liquid. So as time
Should
moves
be.
along,
That's
you
right.
can do this with that, or you can dump this idea, or you can shift it around, and that's the great thing going forward.
Yeah.
It's not written in cement.
It's a
And
fluid
so
plan.
with these
Yeah.
plans, there is a percent that we have to kick in, and so part of that with the edible forest, food forest, whatever you wanna call it, would be the land itself that we're donating to that area, and then also summer student time to put in those trees.
Alright, that's it from me for
Okay.
now.
Okay,
Just, Heather, before you leave, this is the first time hearing this, I just wanna talk to you before you leave, if that's okay.
Sure.
perfect, okay. Okay, open it up to the public.